no framework. What the hell is he talking about? But if you know the result, then you know how to put the teachings at least into place. So, okay, it's a big path. There's many things to do, but that's the bottom line. That's what we're aiming for. So then the essence of being a Buddhist then is to know your mind. As Lama Yeshe puts it, be your own therapist. But now, if you look at the Buddhist path, and like any body of knowledge you're trying to internalize, including tennis or cake making, you do the beginning stuff first, let's call it junior school. You do the slightly more advanced, let's call it high school. Now you go to university and get even more sophisticated, and then you end up at postgraduate. I mean, this is a really simple analogy, and I use it all the time. Okay, we know very well Lama Tsong Khapa in the 14th century didn't use such modern words. You know, as Lama Zopa, who very respectfully, respecting the lineage, would use Lama Tsong Khapa's terms, and he would call what I refer to as junior school, the first level of work. He says that's the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability. I mean, that's quite a mouthful, isn't it? And then you got your middle scope, the teachings of the disciple with the middle capability, the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the middle capability. And then you got university, the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the greatest capability. And then you have postgraduate. So, I mean, it's gradual, it's levels, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, then you graduate. The word is really logical. But when we hear the Tibetan word lam-rim, we just kind of go, huh? Don't get it. We can't hear it, you know? So it's this body of knowledge that we're trying to internalize. Now, the other point is this. If when you're a Buddha, when you graduate, you're a Buddha, and you've rid the mind of all the rubbish and grown all the goodness, well, the first question would be, well, that's good. We've got to learn what the mind is, and we'll do that. But second, you've got to ask the question, well, why should I? Why would I want to become one of those? Well, it's very simple. Because you're suffering, baby. And all the delusions in the mind, the neuroses, the ego grasping, all the first lot, they're the source of your suffering, which is a big surprise because we thought the boyfriend was a source of suffering, you know? So no, he says you can get rid of all that stuff because that's the source of your suffering. So that's a second point that's quite powerful. That tells us something. So that if it's true, then I don't want suffering. And if I'm taking Buddha's views on board and I know then he's telling me that the delusions in my mind are the cause of my suffering, which is a bit surprising, then I better learn to know how to identify them. That's pretty clear. So I can grow the flowers. So like, that's why Buddha often uses the analogy of, you know, seeds and fruits. So the hard job of being a Buddhist, you become a Buddhist when you work on your mind. But the Buddha says that's too hard first. That's high school. You've got to go to junior school first. And because we don't just have a mind, we have body and speech. We have a body, this bag of bones that we walk around in. And it's got two parts, two aspects. It's got the physical component and it's got the verbal. So we've got to work on those first. Why should we? Because right now, the delusions which are running rampant in our mind because we become programmed with this stuff from the first second of conception, these delusions, they drive our body and speech to do this ridiculous nonsense. You know, kill, lie, steal, rape, terrorize, eat too much cake, jump on too many boys. So our body and speech, the servants of our mind, that's junior school. Control your body and speech, baby. Control the servants of your mind. Why would you do that? Well, this brings us to the next point. Because the Buddha's deal is, he says the law that runs the universe, he didn't make it up. He's not a creator. He's observed it like any intelligent person. He's like a scientist. He's observed something. He's then tested it out and articulates it and presents it. And he says, this is my findings. Now it's over to you. So every millisecond of what we think and do and say programs us. So seeds in our mind that produces whatever we experience in the future. We're our own creator, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama said. So we need to learn to know this law then, because this is the law that runs our lives. This is the law within which all beings live and exist. It's the law that runs the universe. It's the law within which the universe runs. So if it's the law that determines happiness and suffering, and if it happens it's every millisecond of what I think and do and say with my body, speech, and mind, sow seeds in my mind that will produce my future happiness or suffering, I better learn before I control the mind. I better learn to know the laws of karma and control my body and speech, because I don't want suffering. Then we've got some enough space to go to high school. That's the essence of junior school is karma. That's the essence. There's more steps to get to it, but that's the essence. Abide by the laws of karma. Stop sowing more seeds that will cause you future suffering, because I'm sick of suffering. Now you get to the high school, we really start to become a Buddhist. This is where it says this is the unique approach for the Buddha. If you do the first scope, abide by the laws of karma, that's common to the world. Ethics, it's good ethics basically, but that's common. A good Muslim, a good communist, a good Christian, They're all not kill, not lie, not steal. So good ethics is common to everybody. Okay, Buddha's view of ethics is pretty unique, and his reason for why you should live according to ethics is pretty unique, because he's not a creator. But when you really become a Buddhist, the unique approach is where you start to work on your mind. This is unique to the Buddha. So we have to know what the mind is, what it's not, and how to unpack and unravel it, how to identify its contents. That's the actual job of being a Buddhist. Now, if you just stop there, if you graduated there at high school, you've done the Hinayana path. You eventually will realize emptiness, and you'll get some concentration, realize emptiness, and you'll get the hell out of samsara. You won't come back. You're finished. You're done. You're cooked. But the Mahayana path says we can do more. So we go into the compassion wing. That's the wisdom wing done. We can go into compassion wing. So then we start to realize, as we control our own body and speech, as we start to work on our mind, as we start to expand our mind and realize that the whole world doesn't exist just in terms of satisfying my needs, which is how we are right now, samsaric and ridiculous and self-centered, then we'll start to go, oh my God, we're all in the same boat. How can I leave all these sentient beings behind? Because they're all driven by the same law as me. They all think everybody else causes their suffering and happiness. They're all running around demented, like, as we say in Australia, like chickens with their heads off. We say chooks, actually. We call them chooks. I don't know why. I think it's Irish. A chicken is a chook. Chicken is a chook. No, yeah, chook. We call chook. That's right, chook. And a chicken is a chick. Yeah, chickens are chicks. But I think we're American now. We go to the supermarket and we don't buy chooks anymore. We buy chickens because we're very American. Anyway, like a chook with your head off. We're completely berserk. And then we start to realize, how can we leave sentient beings behind? So we cultivate compassion. We actively, in the first level, you're getting rid of the delusions and you're calming those. And in the compassion, when you continue to get rid of delusions, but now it's in reference to helping others. And you finally get to, then you achieve bodhicitta, the next level of realizations. Then you do the 6 perfections from life after life after life, bopping around, perfecting the 2 wings. The first 4, the first 4 of the perfections, where you're relating to sentient beings, smashing your own delusions, getting closer and closer to them. And then in the last 2, concentration and wisdom, you're perfecting the wisdom wing. And when you've done all that, you become a Buddha. And then you can hop on to postgraduate if you're, and practice Tantra and speed the process up. That's the essence. So the one more point to say that's really crucial. You know very well, if you wanted to become like Bach, if you want to become like Federer, if you want to become a cook, whatever it might be, any body of knowledge that we are actually geniuses at accomplishing, we understand the process really well. You know perfectly well, you just don't hop on the court and replicate what Federer does. If you're really brilliant and you've come into this life with strong tendencies to be good at tennis, you'll have it in your mind already, and you'll be able to do that very quickly. You just don't walk into the kitchen and follow what your mother does and completely make a cake. You've got to learn the theories first. You've got to involve your conceptuality. You've got to squeeze your brain with the theories. You certainly just don't go to the piano and start playing like Bach. Well, you could, again, if you come into this world. I mean, I'm completely captivated by these genius children, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, playing unbelievable music, at the age of 3 and 4. The only explanation is past karma. They come into this life so programmed. They just have to look at the piano once and they're done. These little baby fingers, brilliant on the piano that people might take 30 years to accomplish. That's a possibility. Some of these holy beings, the reincarnated holy beings, like Rinpoche's, this amazing Lama, Kadrola, she's one of Lama Zopa's Lamas, actually. She lives in Nepal too. She lives in Nepal, and she's a student of Lama Zopa's, but she's also his teacher. In the November course last year, Rinpoche said, she's my first lady Lama. I think everyone was very happy to hear that. Kadrola, she's this amazing being. Well, Lama Zopa said she came into this life fully programmed. She was Vajrayogini already. She didn't seem to show that she needed to learn anything, So if you've done the work already, you'll come into this life already done. You're cooked, you're done, how marvelous. But in general, you can't just go to the piano and replicate Bach. You can't just go and replicate a cake. You squeeze your brain first. You learn the theories. Well, that's the same here. One of the commonest misconceptions in our culture, we've got this bizarre misconceptions about this word meditation. It's so ingrained, I can't describe it. Even among Buddhists who've been practicing for years. It's like as if it's some magical tool, like some magic. We'll think of it as an alternative to a pill. We think of it as you got to make all the thoughts go away. We think, it's a relaxation technique. We think you have special visions, or especially we think you get an experience. I mean, this is just misconceptions. The word to meditate in Tibetan is very surprising to us. The word to meditate, the verb, is gom, and it literally translates as to familiarize, to become familiar with, or simply to learn. I mean, we're really shocked. We thought it was to do with single point of concentration and missing out. No, the real meaning of to meditate is to familiarize yourself with those thoughts, with cooking thoughts, with music thoughts, with Buddhist philosophical thoughts. Why? Because that's the level we function at. We function at an intellectual level. So we utilize, we can't just bypass it. You can't just leap onto the piano and get an experience of Bach. You have to conceptualize it first, have the theories. Then slowly, with familiarity of thinking it through, your fingers will slowly begin to obey the thoughts and you'll play the piano. This is exactly with the Buddhism. So what a Buddhist is actually is a person who is listening to and then training themselves to think exactly like a Buddha, which means to listen to the philosophy about karma, because that's Buddha's explanation of reality. So you want to replicate that explanation. In the beginning, you can't prove it like anything. You can't prove that 1 + 1 is 2 immediately. You go home and do your homework. Same here. You go home, you listen to the theory that your teacher just told you, 1 + 1 is 2. You get a bit of focus first, the first mode of meditation, because you can't do anything, you can't concentrate. Then you go to the second mode, and that's when you familiarize your mind with what? 1 + 1 = 2. They are concepts. It's a concept. It's a thought. It's a theory. But you have to make sense of it. You've got to have focus. Then you internalize it. And one moment you'll go, oh, mummy, now I get it. The penny has dropped. You've now got the experience of 1 + 1 is 2. Well, that's what being a Buddhist is. So you listen to karma, you think about it, and then you internalize it. And the more concentration you have, the more you internalize it, and it becomes your experience, but not overnight, obviously. And then you internalize all the teachings about impermanence. And then you listen to all the teachings about refuge. And then you listen to all the teachings about the mind and about the Four Noble Truths and about emptiness and about bodhicitta. You learn this massive body of knowledge, just like musical theory. And then you internalize it, and then you express it, and then you become that. But we've got this addiction to meditation and practice as being something kind of different, you know. We're schizophrenic. People so often say, oh, I'm not philosophical. I don't want to listen to the teachings. I want to practice. Because we think practice means closing your eyes and being quiet. I mean, that's just kind of pathetic. It's not like that. It's ridiculous. So to listen to the words. And then naturally, even just to make a cake, you can't just make up what you think the recipe means. You can't just decide that a teaspoon is really a tablespoon. Well, I think I'll put 4 tablespoons of sugar, not 1. You can't do that. I mean, you can if you like, but you won't get the cake that the cook told you. You can play what any note you like on the piano, but you won't play like Bach. You've got to decide who you want to become like. You can be your own ist. You can be a Maria-ist or a Robina-ist or a Nina-ist or an Elena-ist. You can make up your own. You can do what you like. Buddha's not a boss. But if you want to become a Buddha, if you want to stop suffering and get happiness in the way Buddha describes, you simply follow his instructions. It's so simple. But our trouble is, again, the other fault is because in our culture, and this is not criticizing, but it's just the views we have, when we think spiritual, we equate it with creator. And again, this is a massive point that's really important to think about consciously. Not just hear it and gloss over it. I always quote this, always. There are certain things I always say because it's so important. I remember this scientist in New Zealand years ago, Nelson. He said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? Now, that is a perfect question if you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, you name it. The big religions on this planet, they seem to be the ones that are popular, certainly in the Western culture, in, you know, all the culture that tracks itself back to the Middle East and to all that lot. Then they opposit a creator. So we assume religions equals creator. We assume that. So when we hear that Jesus says, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, we assume, and it's correct if you're a Christian, it's because God said. And this is and that's why that man asked that question, because there's an assumption that spiritual teaching, spiritual philosophy is coming from on high. It's coming from on high, from a boss. So the only way you can handle that, and this is appropriate, is you must believe it. Because by saying, well, I'm going to check on what God says because I want to make sure he's right. No, that would be the supreme sin of arrogance, because that's assuming you can become God. You cannot by definition. So, but the Buddha is not like that. So when I said to this scientist in answer to his question, I said, would you ask Einstein who revealed the teachings to him? He was shocked. Of course you wouldn't. Because we know Einstein is not a creator. He didn't ask you to believe him. He's not telling, you know, he's not being dogmatic. He didn't get that information from a dream. He didn't have a vision. It wasn't revealed to him. We know that's not like what science is. Well, Buddha's exactly like that. And it really takes us time to hear that. Because we have these assumptions, you can't prove the things that Buddha says, that we can't prove reincarnation, we can't prove karma. We only say that because we have an assumption about what the mind is based on philosophical materialism, which is not the same view that Buddha has. So you've got to learn to know what Buddha means by the mind. What are the techniques that Buddha would suggest we use in order to prove the things he's saying? And the fact of the matter is, if there's a single thing that Buddha says all the way to Buddhahood that can't be proved first intellectually, that can't be presented intellectually, then it doesn't exist. It's not possible. So you've got to be very rigorous. So naturally, the only approach is you take it as your working hypothesis. I say that continually, and it's the only way to do it, just like you would with mathematics, whether it's 1 + 1 is 2 or the most complex physics. You'd first take it as your hypothesis, and then you prove it to yourself by doing it. Of course, it takes time, but there's no other approach. There's no other approach, because you're the boss, not Buddha. It takes us time to think like that, you know. We just assume we have to believe things. We just assume it's a belief system. No, it is not. Okay, now that'll do for now. Now ask me your questions. Let's go. Discussion.
All right, let's go. So I have a few from the pre-submitted ones. The first one says, can you hear me well, Venerable?
I can.
Great, thank you for this amazing introduction, which probably awakened many more questions in us. But
this is the whole thing. Go
question number 1. During the course, we learned about suffering, karma, dependent origination, and so on. Nowadays, we find ourselves in a world with ever increasing inequality in the middle of a pandemic and environmental crisis.
That's right.
So given we cannot identify a single phenomenon as being the cause for the current situation, how can we take responsibility for moving forward? How do we heal from the situation when there is not one cause to the problem? Is the solution philosophical or practical?
The solution to understanding a cake involves both philosophy and practice. You have to know the theory. You have to know the recipe. That's philosophical. That's intellectual. First, you know the theory, and then you can gradually, unpacking it, you can then practice it. Same here. So, okay. The big picture point of view, which you would have been, discussing in this whole path. The big picture in Buddhism is the view of karma. This is the fundamental law that Buddha has identified with his own mind that runs the universe. Without understanding karma, you can't understand Buddhism. Okay, 99% of people who call themselves Buddhas on this planet know nothing about karma and don't care, because we like the idea of mindfulness meditation, which indeed Buddha did teach. We like the idea of being able to calm down a bit, so we do that. Nothing wrong. That's 1% Buddhist. You can be a 1% Buddhist. But if you want the big picture, and that's up to you, and I like the big picture, you've got to understand karma. Otherwise, it's just Buddhism's a load of rubbish, It's just a load of rubbish. Certain components of it. It's like if you want to play like Federer, you can't just do one nice backhand. You could if you wanted to. You could live just doing a backhand. You're very welcome. You could live by just throwing the ball in the air, not even doing the serve yet. You could play that. You could learn to throw the ball in the air before you do a serve perfectly. But you're not playing tennis, baby. You understand? You're throwing the ball in the air, ready to do a serve, and you can pass the exam at the best throwing in the air before you do a serve. You're allowed to do that, but it won't help you much. So, the law of karma is fundamental, and it takes the time to hear it. So, the Buddha is telling us this natural law, the law that runs the universe, the law within which the universe runs. And that's why in the same way when we think of, this is a crucial point again. This is the point I was implying with that scientist question. I have a Catholic priest friend, I always quote this, a Jesuit, and I asked him, what by definition is a sin? And he said, by definition, a sin is doing what God said not to do, going against God's will. Now that is perfect if you posit a creator, which is the usual view of religion, which is how we equate that with Buddhism. So Buddha's telling us, do not kill, do not steal. Why not? Because Buddha says. And that usually means you'll get punished. And you do God's will, you'll get rewarded. That dualistic view of punishment and reward, this is our mind, it is embedded in our mind. And do not blame your Catholic mummy or your Jewish mummy. It is a function of the root delusion called ego grasping, that we have this dualistic view of punishment and reward, good and bad, guilt, naughty, angry, attachment. The whole model fits to this dualistic view. It's a load of rubbish. So for the Buddha, you ask him, you say to Jesus, why not kill? Why not, Jesus? Because God said. It's appropriate if there is a creator, if there is a boss who does create the universe, who is, by definition, is the boss. So you must obey. Nothing wrong with that. The same in your mother's household. Do not do that. Why not, mummy? We all know her answer. Because I say so. Well, that's not Buddha. He's not the boss. You don't go to your doctor and she says, don't smoke. Why not? Because I say so. Oh, really? And what will happen if I smoke? I will punish you with cancer. You would laugh if your doctor spoke that way. But that's how we think of religion. That's why we're dualistic. That's why we get guilt. That's why we're childish. That's why we can't take responsibility, because we think it's done to us. It's not fair, you know? No view like that. So the view of karma is, first of all, we have a mind, and you've got to understand that. Mind is not physical. Mind does not come from someone else. Mind is the word you use to refer to all the thoughts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition, the entire spectrum of our inner being. Mind is not physical. Mind is not, is got a subtle level of cognition. Mind does not come from a creator, and mind does not come from mummy and daddy. That's a big surprise to the West. No, your body, thank you, mum and dad. They work really hard to give you a brain and a liver and a breast and a nose. They worked hard to give you the body, but that ain't your mind, baby. Your mind is not your brain. Your brain is not your mind. They work beautifully together. The brain, I would suggest, is simply the physical indicator of what goes on in your consciousness, your mind. So it doesn't come from a creator either. You know, they're both mistaken for the Buddha. That's not his observation. His observation is your consciousness is not physical. It's got these much more subtle levels. It's got this amazing potential to become a Buddha, and it comes into this, and its continuity, it's its own entity. So you track yourself back to the first second of conception. If you're a materialist, you go back to egg and sperm, mummy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, and the dog and the monkeys. Not for Buddha. That's your body, no problem. He's not discussing the body. Then if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, you track yourself back to God. Neither of those for the Buddha. You track your consciousness back to a previous moment of itself, clearly at a subtle level. And a few weeks before that, it was in a previous body. And a few weeks before that, it was in a previous body. This is not just some made up thing by the hippies in the 1960s. This is, this is the findings of the Hindus well before the Buddha. 3,000 years ago, these genius Indians came up with this observation with the brilliance of their own mind, you know. They're the ones who created this single point of concentration. So the law of karma for the Buddha is that every millisecond, what we think and do and say necessarily leaves seeds in the mind that will produce your future experiences. You're the boss. Like Dalai Lama calls it self-creation. So even that concept is so shocking to us. That's the fundamental law that is underpinning everything in Buddhism, everything. So given that, then we have to look at if whatever I've done in the past is the cause of what I am now, and if whatever I do now is the cause of what I become in the future. And that's not a big surprise for us. You know perfectly well, if you sit at the piano and I can see you playing piano really well, I know perfectly well why you're good at piano. You produced a pianist. By how? By working hard. Hardly rocket science. So if you come up into this life like that, you know, like Kandala, this amazing Lama, fully developed in goodness and wisdom and clarity, you come into this life, this 3-year-old little kind of Russian boy whom I'm totally addicted to watching, that he can play Bach like the drop of a hat, then we can deduce he's done it before. It's hardly rocket science, you know. But what we do is, so anyway, so then you can take that view as a hypothesis. Then everything we are now is the fruit of what we've done, and everything that we do now produces who we will be. So now the next one to really get the point about the world and the suffering and the way it all is now. There's 4 ways our karma ripens. There's only 4 ways of putting it. You can divide the entire experience of the universe into these 4. Think of yourself, or anybody else for that matter. 1, the first result of your past actions, this is the fully ripened result, is your body, the type of body you get. You're not a lion, you're not a worm, you're not a whale, you're not a god, you're not a hell being, you're a human. So you won the lottery, baby. We didn't really win the lottery. It's just hard work. It's the fruit of past virtue, particularly not killing, that you programmed your consciousness with non-harming, non-killing in the context of living in vows of non-killing, as Lama Zopa says, as being good is not enough. So then at the time of your death, that virtuous karmic seed in your bank vault, and you've got trillions of karmic seeds in your bank vaults, nothing goes astray ever. So that was triggered because you died well, and that programmed you that second before you even stopped breathing, a few weeks before you found your way to your new mummy's womb. They probably haven't even met yet, your mummy and daddy, but you're already programmed to go to them. Why? Because you've got karmic connection with them. So the first one is the result of our past actions. We get a human life. Wow. Second, now Hitler has one of those, so does Mother Teresa. Look at the difference. The difference is not their nose or their ears. Maybe Hitler had prettier ears than Mother Teresa. Maybe his feet were cuter, but their mind is the difference. So that's the second way your karma ripens, your tendencies. Your tendencies, your personality traits, and they're a bunch of habits. They do not come from your parents. They come from past habit of you. That little musician, his mother's not very good at music, but he can play Bach like a genius because he's done it before. Hitler is really good what he did because he's done it before. Mother Teresa was really good at what she did because she'd done it before. That's the second way your karma ripens, your own tendencies. Third, now, this is called experiences similar to the cause. And if you think about this, this is the way since you're born up to now, the way you're seen and treated by others. We're very social beings, aren't we? We live among sentient beings. Since you're born, since you're conceived, you've met rats and cockroaches and aunties and uncles and mothers and fathers, and sometimes a rapist, and sometimes generous people and loving people. Sentient beings, we're very social. We live in this intensely social universe of other sentient beings. And guess what? You could divide every one of your experiences, if you could remember them all, since you're born, into two categories: the people and the beings who were nice to you, and the people and the beings who are mean to you. Guess what? They're called experiences similar to the cause. Fourth, the way the very physical world impacts upon you. We all don't float around in the sky. We live in physical environments. So again, so the bottom line is this. One action, for example, of non-killing, a conscious intentional non-killing, practice in the context of living in vows of non-killing, which we should talk about. These sow your seeds in your mind so that at the time of your death, one of those was triggered, and then that produced you to get this body. That's the first way that karma ripens, non-killing. The second way that non-killing ripens is a tendency. So you wake up in this life with no thought to kill. That's unusual on this planet. Think of the planet. Most humans, forget about animals. Animals live in being killed or killing themselves. They live in killing like hell. And humans, look at us, most of us kill something. Most religions say it's okay to kill. So that's the fruit of the habit of killing. You wake up in this life with no thought. You're going to kill the mosquitoes, kill the rats, kill the roaches, kill your ex-husband, kill people in a war, kill the fish, kill the bugs, whatever it is. Even if you're a wholly vegetarian and vegan, billions of beings die, just even for our veggies, we don't even think about them. So we kill. So this is the nightmare of this environment we live in, this universe. So the tendency, the result of non-killing as a tendency is to wake up in this life with no thought to kill. Wow. 3, the result of killing as an experience similar to the cause, a result of non-killing, as an experience similar to the cause. The third way our karma ripens is you won't get killed and you won't die young. Well, every one of us so far, tick that box. We're not dead yet. No one's killed us and we haven't died yet. That's the fruit of non-killing. 4th, environmental karma, the very physical world that you live in. The result of non-killing is that it won't harm you. It'll be delicious. The food will be lovely. The air will be nice. The water will be depolluted. The city will be clean, like Zurich, One Tibetan Lama was asked what he thought of, I think it was Switzerland, I can't remember, or the West in general. Maybe he meant Switzerland. He said, it's so clean and you keep on cleaning it. It was Lama, it was wonderful. So that's the fruit, the environment being delicious and unharmful and not dirty and not harming you. That's the fruit of non-killing. So if you've got the karma to have a nice human body, not have any tendency to kill, no one's killing you, you're not dying young, and the physical world doesn't harm you, honey, that's the result of non-killing in those 4 ways. So you just swap that over. Now let's look. You've got one person got a human body right now, and it's your next door neighbor, and you notice they're a really nice person. They don't even hurt a fly, but people harm them. Or environmentally, they get sick. They got COVID-19. Just by blinking at someone else, they now got COVID-19. That's the fruit of past killing. Some people, a lot of us now, the physical world right now, the environment right now, look at it, COVID-19 is universal. So for many of us, see that the experience similar to the cause is personal. You get killed, you die young, but environmental is the physical world. So humans, like your neighbors and your next door people and the people in the restaurant and the people in the street, that's an environment for you. So we can't even touch each other now. That's the environmental karma of past killing, that if you did touch a human or you kissed a human, you could die. I mean, in Queensland, they have this kind of revolting creature everyone hates. They brought in to stop some kind of in the sugarcane industry, and it's called a cane toad. And it's so repulsive that animals who eat it will die an agonizing death. Well, that's how we are now for each other. Like a cane toad is the environment for some animal, and it kills it, like eating poison food. Well, humans are poison for us now. This is very powerful, isn't it? So that's our all collective environmental karma of past killing, that we now, the physical world is so harmful, we have to put masks, we can't touch each other. So there's 4 ways our karma ripens. So when you have the view of karma, it suddenly puts into place why things are happening. Okay, this is Buddha's view. I'm not asking you to believe it. Jesus has got another view. We materialists are still trying to work out what the hell's going on with our scientific views. It's up to what you decide you're going to take on board. It's up to you to decide what music you want to play. It's up to you to decide what philosophy, if any, that you want to use as your hypothesis to explain things to you. Well, this is the Buddhist view. So part of the thing is this. Why we suffer so much in our world is because we don't know why things happen. This is why it's so agonizing. Now, I'm not trying to stuff Buddhism down your throat. We don't have to believe it. You've studied it. You might even want to take it as your working hypothesis. But let's say, let's say you've never heard of botany. You've never known there's such a law. And you're living in the bush, in the tropics, and you don't know what goes on. You don't know what causes things to grow. You've got no idea that things grow if you put them in the seed and then put them in the ground. The sun impacts upon it, the water impacts upon it, but you have no idea. You're just living in fear every day of these big plants growing, and they come up under your floor, they come through your window, and you're living in terror because you have no theory of why. That's what Buddha says, why most of us suffer. We have no sense of cause and effect, no view of karma. Of course, this is Buddha's view. He says this is why we suffer, because we don't know why things happen. Our main suffering is, why is this happening? Why is all this suffering? Why am I suffering? Why did he harm me? We go mad. Well, this is Buddha's view, you know. And when you have an explanation that you decide you're going to buy into, you suffer less, because you know why there's COVID-19. You know why there's crazy politicians. You know why you break a leg. You know why someone's kind to you, because I'm talking about happiness as well. But this is the interesting point. We never ask why do good things happen. We don't care. Just we've got the hubris and the entitlement that I deserve good things, so give me more, please. I don't care why, but the bad ones, I'm sorry, I don't deserve those. That's the view we have right now. This is why we suffer so terribly. So karma is fundamental to put into place Buddha's entire view, you know. So then you know why things are happening. And the more you apply that to yourself, the more you steady your own body, speech, and mind, because you know you don't want future suffering. So you know way you're going to kill, lie, steal, badmouth, cheat. No way, because you don't want future suffering. Not because Buddha said. You know, to think that you're going to get cancer because your doctor punishes you because you're going to see you smoke is hilarious. Buddha thinks that's infantile. And then if you had that view, you go home and you notice your doctor's not there. So out come the Marlboros. Oh, she won't see me smoke. I won't get cancer. That's how we think of morality. Buddha says it's ridiculous. So when you have the view of karma and you know where whoever sees you smoke won't matter because you know it's a natural law that if you smoke, it might cause cancer, then you become accountable. And then you have compassion for others because they don't realize that the smoking is causing them suffering. They think Mr. Marlboro caused it. So as they keep smoking out of the hole in their throat, they try to sue Marlboro, as if that's going to help you stop getting cancer. It won't. So that's the answer to your question. I hope that helped, roughly. Any more questions?
Did it help?
Sure.
Whose question was that? Peter? Whose question was that? Jeff?
Marek's.
Who?
I think he's waving, Marek.
You look like about 40,000 meters away. I can't see you.
You can come up if you like, Marek.
Come over closer, please. What's his name? Who are you?
Marek.
Marek. I know you, don't I?
Yes, we spoke before.
Good. Happy, darling. So it's a little bit, but this is the basis, Marek, of the whole Buddhist view. There's much more, but the karmic one is fundamental. Everything else emptiness comes from that. Understanding the mind comes from this. I mean, it's just everything. Karma is a fundamental view to get a sense of, and it's one of the hardest ones in our culture because we just think it's superstition, Anyway, go on, more questions.
There's one more that came up in our discussion group that is also related to karma. So I'll go with this one next. In the course, we learned that karma is a natural law and one must experience the result of one's actions. Yeah. How do we reconcile this with the practice of purification? Is the negative karma erased in the process of purification?
Well, we take a law called botany, right? We all understand this perfectly well. It's not even confusing for us. We learn that clever people have observed over the centuries, observed growing things. They didn't have a dream or a vision of botany and suddenly produce it. They saw growing things. They used their noggin. They observed growing things. They began to articulate the laws and then they codified them and they presented them. And so anybody who wants a garden will follow the laws that people have decided, that they've articulated. It's the same here. So we know if you sow a seed, you'll get a fruit, baby. It's just the way nature is. If you sow a seed, you'll get a fruit. Well, guess what? You can pull it out, can't you, anytime? Well, that's purification. It's so simple. It's so simple. I mean, you just, do the opposite. You know that there's a weed in your garden, because you sowed the weed. You didn't mean to because you didn't know what a weed was. You didn't know what a cause was. Now you know botany. So you see the weed, you know what a weed is, you can define it, and you know it's going to choke your veggies. So you pull the damn thing out. But some weeds are pretty big. Some weeds are as big as 4,000 foot, 10 million year old redwoods. So they take time. You can't just chip away at it. But it's a process of knowing what a weed is, knowing what a flower is, knowing you want the flowers, which is the virtue and the goodness and the positive things. And you don't want the weeds, so you chip away at them. That's called purification. And that's just 4 steps. It's a psychological process, You're reprogramming your mind, basically. You're reprogramming your garden. So that means you have to have botany. You've got to know how to identify a weed from a flower. You've got to know you want the flowers, and you've got to know you don't want the weed. So then you learn the techniques to slowly remove the weeds and grow the flowers. So purification is pulling out the weeds, but they won't go out immediately. You weaken them. You put atomic bombs under them with the purification process. And it consists of 4 steps because we're talking the psychology here. So the first is you acknowledge that you sowed that dumb, stupid looking seed. You regret it. Because why? Because you don't want the weed. You don't want the suffering. 2, whom can I turn to give me the methods of how to stop these weeds? You turn to the Buddha. He's your gardener. You have to take refuge. And the second step, because what we're regretting is the actions we've done to harm others. So the second step, you take refuge in the doctor, and then you have compassion for those you've harmed. Regret is like compassion for yourself because you don't want the future suffering. Then you have compassion for those you've harmed because they don't want suffering either. So the third is you apply the antidote. You do the opposite. 4th, you make a vow not to do it again. It's very simple, very practical psychology. There's no karma we can't purify. Eventually, the real purification is when you realize emptiness. Because when you realize emptiness, you've cut the root and the delusions can't grow from there. But, the process of purification using these 4 opponent powers, these 4 steps, the 4 R's, regret, reliance, the remedy, and resolve, because the whole thing is psychological. As Lama Yeshe says, we create negativity with the mind, so we purify it by creating positivity with the mind. So you're reprogramming your mind and you're putting atomic bombs under the tendencies and the karmic seeds. And you're reprogramming the person you're becoming. That's purification. Hope that helped. Okay. Briefly. What else, darling?
Did it help?
There's no karma you can't purify because everything's dependent arising. Everything is empty of intrinsic nature. There's no karma we can't. There's no tendency we can't change.
So
Go on, darling.
a follow-up question then. Hello, Venerable. Just then a follow-up, Cyril.
Where's your computer? It looks like it's under a roof or something. Nina, what's your computer? What is it?
Maybe we tilt it like this. Is it better, Venerable?
Pull it out and you get closer to you people. You're like in the moon. I can't see anybody.
Okay, is that better?
No, I can see a few of you. How many of you are there?
10 people, Venerable.
I just saw a bunch of furniture. Now I see people. Now, thank God I'm seeing people. Okay. Squeeze up a bit. I can see you all now. So go on. What's the question, sweetheart?
So my question, if that's true that everything can be purified, then
yes.
How do you explain the story of Buddha walking and cutting his foot on grass, and him saying that he cut his foot on grass because he had killed ants when he was a child, and so therefore.
Why is that a contradiction? Well, all he's saying is, listen, one point is this: if there is a weed in your garden, what's the main reason it's there?
Because you've
Planted it.
You've planted it, yeah.
Oh, you didn't pull it out, whatever, but you planted it. If it's your garden, you must have planted it. So all Buddha's saying is, suddenly a weed ripened one day called whatever happened to him, and all he's telling you is the cause of it. He didn't pull it out. If you'd pull that weed out, you wouldn't see the weed. If Buddha had purified that action, the result wouldn't have come. If you get a headache, which is a fruit of some negative action, then the headache is the proof of the pudding that you must have caused it. But if you purified that headache first, if you'd pulled that weed out before it grew, you wouldn't have a weed. So it's a simple logic. Whatever's in your garden is the proof that you planted it. So then when you learn botany, you learn from a mistake, and I better start pulling out the rest of the weeds before they ripen. I better pull out those seeds. I better put atomic bombs under them before they ripen. You get ahead of the game.
But is it realistic to believe that Buddha didn't purify? I mean, he's Buddha. Is it realistic to believe that Buddha didn't purify?
I don't know the story. Tell me the story. What are you saying? What's the story you've heard? I don't understand the story. Tell me the story.
No, the story is a story of him not purifying.
No, I know that, but I need to hear the story first. What is the story? I don't know this story. What is the story you've been telling me? Tell me the exact story.
I thought that was the exact story. That's what I heard from.
Tell me again. Tell me again.
That he walked and cut his foot on grass.
So this is the Buddha telling you, as a Buddha, this happened.
That's what I've heard. That's the story I've heard. If it is the Buddha,
no, it's not possible then. If it is the Buddha, so maybe he was just pretending to be like a normal human being. If he is the Buddha, if you are a Buddha, your mind is completely purified of all delusions. You've fully developed all wisdom. You see everything as it is. Your mind pervades the universe. It's not a possibility to have any negative karma ripening. It's not possible. So then if you take, he's just probably giving you an example. But it can't be. If you are an enlightened being, you've finished the job. But for an ordinary person, clearly, then that's the reason. But if it is the Buddha, then it can't be. It's not possible. That's all I'm trying to say.
What about an aharat? What about an aharat?
An aharat hasn't finished all their karma yet. I mean, they finished creating further karma. And there's two kinds of arhats. An enemy destroyer. If you graduated at high school, you've achieved your own liberation. You're a Hinayana arhat. You've cut all the delusions and the results of them, which are suffering, but you haven't completed. You've got more work to do, but you can't fall back into samsara. You can't have any more results of suffering, but you've still got more work to do to remove the subtle imprints from your mind. And secondly, it's not a question of believing it. It's a question of understanding the teachings properly. So all I can do is say these answers to you. Are you clear or not? What's your essential question? Give me your essential question. What's the essential question?
Is it possible to purify all karma?
Well, that's the meaning of the Buddha. Yeah, that's the meaning of the word Buddha. That's why I'm saying, if you're telling me the Buddha, who is the Buddha, said it's the fruit of some past karma, it's not possible, because Buddhas have finished everything. So maybe he's just pretending for human sake. The Dalai Lama is said to be the Buddha. He would never confess to it or admit to it, because it's not going to help people. So he just says he's a regular guy. So he'll talk about karma like it's him as well. But if he is a Buddha, it is not a possibility that any fruit of suffering can happen. It is an impossibility. That's the
okay.
The Buddha was like a regular guy for our sake, I suppose.
I understand now.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm very pleased.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Who else?
Okay, we've got one more, so we kind of move on from the karma topic. The question is, what is the process to get off the likes and dislikes from the desires and the attachments in our mind? What's the process?
Okay, junior school entry levels practice, the Hinayana level, the first level of practice, the lowest scope of teachings. The first thing is we have to control the servants of attachment and the delusions, and that's the body and speech. And that's already a stupendous level of practice. And that's where we learn about the laws of karma. That's where we learn the nuts and bolts of the Buddha's explanation of what is, you know, of the results of suffering. So we stop causing future suffering. We control our body and speech. Overtly or explicitly, the practice there is discipline, disciplining our body and disciplining our speech. The very first level is control, do not kill, do not steal, do not lie, do not badmouth, etc., etc. And then you begin to harness the crazy energy of the physical, which is what impacts upon others. But obviously, implicitly, you're starting to calm your mind down because you're not feeding, you know, the servants aren't feeding attachment and feeding aversion. So now you can get to high school, the middle scope, and this is where you become a Buddhist, be your own therapist, like Lama said. So here, we have to understand Buddhist model of the mind. It's completely unique to the Buddha. We know the words anger and love, we know the words compassion and jealousy, but our definition of them and our source, our understanding of the cause of these is fundamentally different from the Buddha's. So don't conflate these views, they're fundamentally different. So Buddha presents the contents of our mental consciousness, the contents of our mental consciousness. We've got sensory consciousness and we have mental consciousness. And the sensory consciousness is like dumb animals. The sensory consciousness is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness. They're just this tip of the iceberg. They have very limited capacity for cognition. They have bare function to experience. Through eyes, you experience shape and color. Through ears, you experience sound. Tactile, you experience touch, you know, very limited. We give them more power than they've really got. So we need to learn to know the mental consciousness. That's where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. And this is Buddha's expertise. And so we store everything in our mental consciousness, everything we've ever seen, tasted, touched, smelt, heard of, thought of, since beginningless time. Nothing goes astray. Everything is stored in our mental consciousness, which is why we can have clairvoyance, which is why we can finally see everything in the past and the future and everything else, and all the minds of all sentient beings. This is logical for the Buddha in his presentation of how the mind functions. So everything's stored in our mental consciousness. And at the moment for us, it's all chaos. Total chaos. So then Buddha presents the contents of this mental consciousness, the contents. And these are our thoughts. At the gross level we function, we function at the level of conceptuality, thoughts, opinions, viewpoints. And he divides all of these into three categories. There are neurotic, deluded, ridiculous, fear-based, I-based ones that are the source of all our suffering and why we harm others. And we can get rid of those. This is the job. 2, we've got the virtuous, the positive, the valid, the reasonable, appropriate states of mind. And 3rd, we have the mechanics, I call it like that. Concentration, good memory, many of these that enable us to function, whether you're a murderer or a meditator. So we've got to start to unpack and unravel and become super sophisticatedly familiar with this, what seems like a massive, big soup of emotion. We're very gross in our understanding of this mental consciousness with respect to us in our neuroscientific views of the world, you know. And this is why we need single point of concentration. So we become intimately familiar with the contents of our mind. Well, in the first lot, Buddha articulates 84,000 distinct neurotic states of mind. Luckily, they all subsume to 3. Ego grasping, the root delusion, ignorance, mat-rigpa, that is the primordial misconception that believes completely in a separate, intrinsic, pointable, findable, real, absolute, unchanging, intrinsic me, which is a load of rubbish. Then on the basis of this, there's this bottomless pit of attachment to get what that fantasy me wants. And on the basis of attachment not getting what it wants, which is 1,000 times a day, the panic attack of aversion, which manifests as anger, annoyed, irritated, frustrated, depressed, despair. There's a spectrum of all of these. So attachment and aversion are effectively the cause of suffering in day-to-day life. This is not how we talk in neuroscience. This is not how we talk in sophisticated modern psychology. So we think Buddha's kind of cute. Sort of simple, you know. So we have to understand this attachment and aversion. It's primordial, it's profound, it's vast, it's astonishing. And this is the key to being a Buddhist. And when we understand these 3, ego grasping, which informs these other 2, and there's a hierarchical relationship between them, we have a deep, profound understanding of our own mind, and we can understand all the other 83,997 neuroses, which are the outcroppings of these. And then we can understand other people really well. So we have to understand attachment, which is the motor that propels us as this bottomless pit of emotional hunger, that's just there at the subtlest level as default mode. We don't even notice it. It's just an assumption that I must get what I want every millisecond. And it has a panic attack when it doesn't. That's aversion. And ordinary people, good people like us, who have access to our virtue, our kindness, our love, our compassion, our wish to practice a spiritual path, this is our saving grace. That's the stuff that makes us vaguely human. That's the stuff that's our saving grace. But because we have those access to those, we just, because in the world, the normal world view of an ordinary person is a person who's got some anger, some jealousy, some fear, some love, some compassion. Buddha says, no, we're all mentally ill. We're all mentally ill. We're all junkies. We're all demented. It's just a question of degree. Buddha's view is more radical. So we have to go beyond the virtues, especially with just some nice people with lots of good karma from the past, and start to unpack and unravel these toxic emotions, as Buddha would call them. And the only way we can, by answering to a question, the only way you can do that job is by understanding what attachment is, and understanding what aversion is, and then learning to become your own therapist second by second by second, and grabbing these as they arise, and then fixing them then. But we wait till it's too late. We wait till we have a breakdown. We wait till we want to kill ourselves or our husband before we think we should do something about it, because we're not used to looking into our minds. So that's why we have to first control the body and speech, then you control the mind, then you can get somewhere. That's the general answer. Hope that helped.
Thank you, Venerable Robina. So another last question that came from the pre-round of questions. Venerable Robina, please share your thoughts on the new clinical studies coming out in the last few years, which seems to point out that certain plant compounds which produce a psychedelic experience may be beneficial as a one-time treatment in depression, alcoholism, and others. I personally was led to the Dharma and the Buddhist teachings by one experience with, and I hope I pronounce it right, ayahuasca, the psychedelic plant used in South American indigenous tribes for millennia. I have had no previous use of a drug of any sort, and I have no intention of doing this again, as I very much strive to live by 5 precepts.
I understand. There's no contradiction. Of course, we have a mind and we have a body. So, you know, look, if your body is starving, you don't feed your body because you think, oh, my body doesn't matter. I've only got a mind. Buddha says the mind is everything. Well, I'm sorry, if you start starving yourself, you won't be able to do anything with your mind, because your poor little mind depends upon a healthy body. If you're a yogi like Geshe-la Kontrog, who can live in the mountains naked with no food and no sleep and no clothes and no, blissful in Vajrayogini's Pure Land, it's because he's done the work. But because our body and mind are so intimately connected right now, even when your body is slightly weird, your mind can't do anything. So your mind and your body are interdependent. So it's nothing special that whether it's a pill that stops pain, whether it's ibuprofen, I mean, I remember when I was in Switzerland, remember the last time I came to Switzerland, I had to go to the hospital. At 10 o'clock at night, they picked me up at the airport and they dragged me off to the hospital. I was living in this agonizing pain, had this awful arthritic fit. So I got to have these drugs. I was so happy when they injected remember Nina, they injected the drugs into me? No, they gave me a pill, remember? In the car.
Yes, they did.
Oh God, don't take that yet. So I went straight to sleep and these poor guys had to drag me up to bed because this painkiller was so intense. So of course, everything you do to your body will affect your mind. It's the fact that it's called psychedelic. Don't fantasize psychedelics. I mean, I was into drugs, like I was into, wonderful drugs. I didn't do heroin, but I did all kinds of drugs. Acid, I did marijuana. And one time in Switzerland, my God, I had the worst nightmare of a bad experience of drugs. When I thought I was lying on the freeway waiting for cars to come over me, I was out of my brain. So they can do nice things to you, but they can also trigger bad things too. So the physical world is merely a trigger. So food triggers better feelings in the mind because the mind and the body depend upon each other. So a certain drug will trigger a certain mental experience. Now, I bet you every single person who's taken those drugs you just mentioned hasn't gone off and become a practitioner and wants to practice want to practice the 5 precepts. No, they become junkies maybe. I could have become a junkie. Luckily, I didn't. I just got bored, So there's no contradiction that something physical can impact upon your mind. And if you're fortunate, because obviously you have the tendency to want a spiritual path, that experience opened you up and enabled you to follow a spiritual path. But it doesn't follow that the drug in its nature causes that in everybody. In the same way for me. Are you with me, people? Whoever asked that question? Does that help? So we can learn from our experiences. I mean, I found it very profound. It really was the opening, for me, the opening of the door of opening my mind. Start with marijuana and the other drugs. I was able to, so that, in other words, it's not marijuana or that drug you mentioned that makes you want to learn spiritual things. You have in your mind a tendency to practice spiritual. So if you take drugs, that is a catalyst for you. And then of course I gave up drugs, so I mean, but it helped me on my way. But it's not the function of marijuana in itself. It's not the function of, you know, that drug you took that you became spiritual. You already had the tendency to be spiritual, and that drug was a convenient catalyst. Well done. But some people, it becomes a catalyst to become a junkie. That's the point. Some food will kill you. Some food will nourish you. It's up to the tendencies in your mind and the karmic imprints you have. That's the explanation. If that helps, I hope so.
Thank you, Venerable. So we have no more questions that were asked before, and now we open it up to the audience. We already have one here at Laksam, and if anybody from the online group wants to, you can either raise your hand or even put the question in the chat, and we'll make sure to give you the opportunity to ask it. But we'll start with Grace.
Go. Okay, Vicky has a question.
Thank you very much. So my question is, I grew up in China, and since I was a kid, my grandfather made me start to read all these texts I didn't understand. And so in China, the text we read, I realized often the translation in, for example, my question is about mind. So a lot of time, if I will read something or I watch a film about Buddhism or whatever, we often use heart, but when it's translated in the West, it's mind. This always puzzles me. Like, you know, we invent the language is the greatest thing. At the same time, it's a trouble. Like,
So the question is what? Do you want to know what the mind is? Is that right?
Yes, like the mind, you mentioned earlier about the mind, all these different levels of mind. My question is just like the Chinese Buddhism books I read, when we write heart, when it's translated, the text become mind.
Okay, so in your, what is your name?
Grace.
What's your
Grace.
Grace, what is your definition of mind? At the moment, wherever you're at in your world, I don't know. Tell me what you think the mind is, the way you use the word. What's the mind?
This is something I don't think I have figured out, because
fine. So I'll give you the Buddhist answer. It's okay, darling. I'll tell you the Buddhist one. So I'll repeat it again, what I said before. Okay, shall I do that and tell you what the mind is for Buddhism? Would you like to know what the mind is for Buddhism?
I think mind is something that it came from maybe that void or the creation, the source, whatever we were given, you know, all these different level of consciousness, subconscious. It's like, I don't want to just simplify.
It's okay, Grace. Shall I tell you the Buddhist view, darling? Would you like to know what Buddhist mind is? Grace?
Yeah.
Grace?
Yes.
Grace? Yes. You're listening to me?
Yes.
Look at the sky. Look at me.
Okay. I'm sorry.
We have you on a huge screen. That's why people are looking at the big.
I keep looking you up. You're the Buddha.
Grace.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the Buddhist view of what mind is. Would you like me to tell you that, Grace?
Yes.
Good, sweetheart. Let me do that again. I did it before, but I talk too fast in my Australian accent, so I'll tell you again. So this is fundamental in Buddhism. The whole of Buddhism would be an absolute load of rubbish without an understanding of what Buddha thinks the mind is. So first of all, the first thing is, for the Buddha, the word mind and the word consciousness are synonymous. They're used in different contexts, but they're referring to the same thing. So what they're referring to in grace, grace has two parts. Grace has a body. She has a brain. She has eyes and nose and feet and nerves. You understand? That's your physical energy. But now you have mental. You have a mind, Grace. And for the Buddha, mind is not physical, but it works intimately and interdependently with your body. So, you know, That's the first point. Your mind isn't your body. Now, the second point is Buddha does not have an equivalent like a word called soul or spirit, which is how Christians and Muslims talk. He does not use a word like that. He says grace has a body and then grace has a mind. So mind or consciousness are used to refer to your thoughts, your angry thoughts or your loving thoughts, your intellect, your feelings, your emotions, your unconscious, your subconscious, your instinct, your intuition, your consciousness. The word is used to refer to this entire spectrum of your inner experiences, to your cognition, to your intellectual, to your rage, to your lust, to your goodness, to your badness, the whole spectrum of every bit. So all of that is your mind. And the difference between a living person and a dead person would be the presence of all of that. So far, can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes, but I
Good. No, Grace, I am trying to answer your question. So just wait for me and I will tell you the rest about the mind. I've just begun, Grace. So far, so good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, then the question is, where does my mind come from? Well, you made this proposition that it comes from something or other like the universe. No, that's not what Buddha says. It's very simple, his answer. So we think if you're a Christian, you track yourself back to a creator. Would you agree with that? Grace, are we communicating? If you're a materialist, Grace, if you're a philosophical materialist, you track yourself back to your mother and your father and your grandmother and the grandfather and all your ancestors and then back to the monkeys. That's the scientific view. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Good. Buddha has a third option, sweetheart. Buddha has a third option. He says, no, grace is consciousness. Think of it as like a river of mental moments, Grace. And you know, today, all your thoughts and feelings and emotions, where do they come from? Guess what? Yesterday's grace. And where did all those thoughts and feelings come from? The day before. And where did they come from? The day before. So think of your consciousness, you know, which is a name given to all these parts of your thoughts and feelings and emotions. It's like a river of mental moments, and you track it back day before, and guess what? You get back to when you're a little girl, you get back to when you're a month old, you get back to when you first came out of your mummy's womb crying, but then you keep going and back in the womb because you were moving in the womb, so that indicates there was a consciousness there, and you soon get back to the first second of conception. If you had perfect memory, you could do that. Are you with me so far, Grace?
Yes,
it's a continuity of mental.
Grace.
What? I beg your pardon?
I try to understand. This is what you meant.
Grace, you're not listening to me. You've got too many thoughts in your head, so you can't listen to what I'm saying. You might not agree with Buddha's view, and I don't want you to agree, and you don't even have to like it. But if you want to have an opinion about it, you have to listen. So let me continue. So then you get back to the first second of conception. So if grace is made up of body and mind, and we track back your body to, you know, young grace, baby, tiny grace, baby in the fetus grace, that's your body. But the body is a living body, and what makes it living is the presence of your consciousness. So you track that back moment by moment, you get back to the first second of conception. Now, if you're a Christian, you track yourself back to God. If you're a materialist, you track yourself back to mummy and daddy. But with the Buddhist one, yes, your body came from the egg and sperm, no problem. But honey, your mind didn't. Your love and compassion and kindness and goodness and intelligence and being good at music and being good at football, they're tendencies in your mind, and they are in that consciousness of yours, and you track yourself back to the first second of conception. Well, what about the moment before conception? Well, your mind goes back to a moment before that, and a moment before that, and a few weeks before that, that consciousness was in another body, and so on and so forth. And then everything you've ever done and thought and said in those past bodies, you programmed your mind, and like a miracle at the time you died, 7 or so weeks before you found your way to Grace's mummy's fallopian tube, various karmic seeds from your habits were triggered, and then before you even stop breathing, you're already programmed, and then you leave the body eventually, and then your karma drives you, and you ran like a magnet to your mummy's fallopian tube, where you joined mummy's egg and daddy's sperm, and then little Grace popped out, and now everything you do in this life is programming you for the next one. Broadly speaking, that's the Buddhist answer. So do you have any questions from that, Grace?
Thank you. I just still don't understand why in China.
Which piece don't you understand, darling? Ask me a question.
In China, in the Buddhism text, when it's heart.
I know that, but I just answered. This is simply the different use of words, darling. That's all. Because obviously.
Okay.
So, but did you hear my answer, what the mind is? Did you hear the answer to what the mind is? Huh?
No, I understand you, but normally when we talk about the heart and the mind in a
I know that. Well, I asked you what you thought the mind was, and you didn't have an answer. So I had to tell you the Buddhist answer. So then all I'm telling you, that's the way that Chinese people have decided to translate the word mind. I don't know. You've got to research why they do that. I don't know why they do that. But your mind is your thoughts and feelings and emotions. Your mind is your goodness and your badness. Your mind is everything. Your mind is what makes you a difference between a dead body and a live body. And it's not your brain, and it's not physical, and it doesn't come from a creator, and it doesn't come from mummy and daddy. It's yours. And the key point there, Grace, is to know your own mind well, and know that Buddha's view of karma is everything you put into your mind and everything you do with your mind will program you to become the next person. So make sure you don't want to become a mean, nasty, ugly person. So you have to create the causes to become a nice person. That's your mind. Why Chinese call it a heart? Don't ask me. You got to ask the Chinese that. Okay?
I'm going to ask Chinese.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. What else? Questions? Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Venerable.
Hello, sweetheart.
I have a question from the chat.
Good.
I have a question. My husband agrees that the concept of karma and reincarnation, but he cannot accept that the human can be reborn in a lower realm, as an ant, for example.
I understand. Does he have a reason? Does he have a logical reason?
He goes on. He accepts that if you pile up negative karma, you will bear the consequences and suffer, but only as a human and keep learning and perfecting. But it doesn't make sense for him, for a human mind to get degraded into an animal one. How does Buddhism explain this better?
Okay. Yeah, I'll explain. The Buddha's view is that even being a human as opposed to an ant, being a human or being an ant or being a dog or being any other kind of being is the fruit of actions. Is the fruit of actions. Everything we are, including the shape we take, including the kind of mind we have, including the way we sound and look, everything is the fruit of actions. So the Buddha's view would be this: if we compare an ant and a human, without being rude about ants, they want to be happy too. They've got Buddha nature as well. But an ant, a person who is born as an ant, because there are 4 ways our karma ripens. One is a type of rebirth, an ant or a human, for example. One is a tendency in that mind. One is the experiences that being has at the hands of others. And one is the environmental result. We both have that. So if we look at an ant, if we look at a human, the Buddha's view is that's everything we are, and the nose, the ear, the shape, how we act, what we do is the fruit of actions. So if we compare a human with an ant, I think without being rude about ants, we can suggest that ideally a human tends to have access to more virtue. One of the consequences, one of the qualities of a human is we can access intelligence. If we're fortunate, we can access an ability to see something from another point of view. We can change our mind. I don't think as much as you try to tell an ant about emptiness or about killing, that it can stop its habits. So an ant has got a limited capacity in its mind due to its past karma, that due to heavy negative karma, it got born into an ant egg as opposed to a mummy's human womb. So a human is the fruit of actions. So the actions that would cause a human mainly is the action of non-killing, non-harming. That's the cause of getting a human body. But the cause of an ant or a lion, let's say, the cause of running to a lion womb at the time of death is strong tendency to kill. And then you're born as a lion with hands ready-made to kill. I mean, try to rip the guts out of buffaloes for breakfast with these tender little things. Even if you've got long nails, it won't work. But a body is, the lion, due to the negative karma, has got a lion's body, and everything the lion has, the shape of its tail, the strength of its muscles, its big tough claws, they are the fruit of millions of different actions. So everything we are is a fruit of actions, including a human body, an ant body, a lion body, a fish body, whatever it might be. There's nothing that isn't, in other words, the broader answer is there's nothing that we are that isn't the fruit of actions. So if you look at Hitler, for example, due to past life, there's 4 tracks of karma. So one lot, he got a human body, the result of non-killing in a particular life. But second, we can see in that human mind, he had lots of tendencies to kill. Look at him. He was a past master at killing. So then in that life, by killing millions of people, there's not a possibility in the universe that as a result of that, he could get a human body. It's just contradictory. A human body, by definition, is the fruit of non-killing. So even a nice person in this life who, due to past virtue, has a human body, but then in this life kills, then guaranteed you won't get a human body next life. Your killing programs you to get a lion body or a fish body or something. So the principle behind this is that there's nothing that we are that is set in stone. There's nothing that isn't the fruit of virtue. Sorry, that isn't the fruit of karma. So of course you've got to think about it. In other words, if you can say once you've been a human, you can't go back, that implies it's set in stone. And that's opposite to dependent arising. That's opposite to karma. It's just not a possibility. Nothing's set in stone. And everything we are, the shape of our nose, the shape of the lion's tail, everything is the fruit of actions. We are our own creators. Nobody created us like that. No one makes us like this. We make ourselves. We program ourselves. So that's the best I can say. It's up to her husband to think about that if he wants to. Thank you. What else in the chat? Yeah.
It's me, Venerable, again.
Hello, sweetheart.
Hi. So one chapter of the lam-rim is renunciation. How to really activate renunciation while being a husband or father, an employee, I mean, while still living in this society.
That's right. So why don't you give me your definition of renunciation first? Because I think we've both got different definitions of renunciation based on your question. So tell me your definition of renunciation.
My definition of renunciation is to get detached from all worldly things.
No, totally mistaken. That's a totally mistaken definition. May I suggest? Like Buddha's definition.
I accept your suggestion. Okay. So what is your definition?
I'll tell you, darling. So the first level of renunciation is to renounce, give up the causes of suffering. So the causes of suffering at the first level are killing, stealing, lying, harming, bad-mouthing, doing actions that harm others are the cause of that future suffering for you. So junior school level of giving up something is you don't want future weeds, so you give up planting them. So you're renouncing the causes of suffering, which means you're also renouncing that future suffering. So you're not giving up anything but suffering and its causes. Can you hear those words?
Mm-hmm.
Hear those words?
Yes.
So you're renouncing future suffering by giving up the present causes which are harming others. The second level of renunciation, a more subtle level, you go to high school now, the middle scope. Now you're going to learn to give up the root of the problem, which is the delusions in your mind that cause your body and speech to kill and steal and jump on too many animals or jump on too many bits of chocolate cake or whatever it might be. So you're now going to give up the main cause of suffering, which is ego grasping, attachment, anger, jealousy, etc. So you're renouncing suffering and its causes. Now, given that attachment is effectively the main delusion that runs us in daily life, then obviously if you are addicted to alcohol, you know you've got to give up not just the attachment to alcohol, but to play safe, you've also got to give up drinking alcohol. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So you have to renounce the alcohol because you know you can't control. So in the beginning, at the first level, Buddha just doesn't, he gets us not to give up food yet. He gets us to give up harming others because that's the heaviest level. But then if you really see you can't control your sex, maybe you should stop having sex for a while. If you have to be jumping on girls or boys 10 times a day, you get a bit depressed. Then you have to watch videos all night, you get a bit exhausted. So you've got to be tough with yourself at some point with some actions, and you maybe also got to give up the actual object. You've got to know where you're at. Are you understanding me? So to think that you've got, so then this is the biggest problem with the word detached. It seems like the opposite of attached, doesn't it? So then you're in a relationship and you want to try and become a good Buddhist. Let's say you've got a wife and children or whatever you've got, or a husband, I don't know, people are very flexible these days. Let's say you've got a girl wife or whatever it is, you know, and you've got 4 children and a job and everything. So you think, well, I've got to give up attachment to this. So you're chucking the baby out with the bathwater. You're thinking, I've got to give up the job, give up the wife, give up the children. You might have to, if you're crazy, you might have to protect yourself. But if you're going to be halfway reasonable on this path, then you can, if you give up, if you control your body and speech first, at least don't lie and don't kill, don't steal. And then you begin to learn, well, I better not have too much cake either. And I won't jump on my wife 4 times a day. So you harness your physical energy, which also then helps you calm your mind down. So you're developing renunciation of suffering and its causes. So the big mistake is, oh, I'm a Buddhist and your wife wants to hop into bed with you. Oh no, I'm renounced. Oh, darling, would you like some dinner? Oh, no, I don't want any dinner. I'm renounced. You become nihilistic. You become a moron. Thank you very much. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Are we communicating?
Yes.
Now, the point is this. If you really want to become a Buddha quickly, it is best to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Take vows, become a monk, and go to the mountains. If you really want to become Federer, don't just play tennis once a week. You play tennis 7 damn hours 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's up to how quickly you want to become a Buddha. If you really want to, yes, give up your wife and children and babies, for sure. Then you become more fast. So it's up to you what level you want to do it at. But
Right.
renunciation.
That was exactly my follow-up question.
Yeah, go on.
No, that was exactly my follow-up question. My follow-up question is, I mean, the following the path requires dedication and work.
That's right. So you have to know. You have to know what level of commitment you are capable of. Honey, if it is the right thing for you and you've got all the karma from the past and all set in place, you definitely will give up your wife and children and job. That's up to you to decide. No one says you have to. Maybe you're not qualified yet to do that. You've got to decide where you're at and what's best for you. We can't all rush off and be Federer overnight. Some people have to practice maybe 10 times more to become like Federer. Some people have the karma so strong, everything is in place, you can become like Federer. So you'll give up all those other things because you want to become like Federer. It's up to you to decide what's your best for this life. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
We go at our own pace, you know. There's levels of capability. In theory, the quickest way to become Federer is give up everything else. Of course it is. The quickest way to become a doctor is study 24 hours a day. But who's capable of that, you know? So we have to see where we're at. It's incremental. It's up to us. It's very personal. But renunciation is giving up suffering and its causes. It's not giving up your wife. I mean, if, you know, you get my point now. Be clear the meaning of the word renunciation. And it doesn't mean, you know, and in a way you put it this way. When you develop less attachment to your wife, you won't just be detached, which means don't care. You'll become more loving. Mm-hmm. It'll activate more love and more empathy and more patience and more kindness. But if you have to give up, you know, if you are an alcoholic, yep, give up the alcohol, baby. You've got to know where you're at and how things out there affect you. You've got to know what your level is, what you need to give up, you know. Do you understand?
Right.
Good. Clear?
Yes.
Thank you, darling. Very kind. Thank you so much. What else? Yes, Jeff.
We have another question from the chat.
Okay.
So I'll just read it.
Okay.
I'm having trouble with calm abiding meditation.
Okay.
When I use the breath as an object, I get up to 21 breaths, but most often thoughts appear that are quite positive, whether they're about love, compassion, non-duality. They're very appealing to the mind and therefore distracting from the breath.
That's right, exactly.
Is this to be considered an obstacle?
Of course it is, absolutely. So this is what we've got to be super clear of the goal. What's the purpose? What's the purpose of doing concentration meditation? The purpose, the goal in the technique itself is to simply learn to focus on one thing. So to have the expectation that you will suddenly focus on one thing just because you started, that's ridiculous. That's like thinking, you know, my job is to climb on a bike and you're 5 years old. So your job is, I'm going to learn to ride a bike. So if you suddenly have the expectation that when you hop on the bike, you're going to have all these experiences, you're going to see the lovely nature and the lovely sky. I mean, that's not the goal. The goal is to stay on your damn bike. The goal is to stay on the bike. So what happens is, let's say you climb on the bike on the left side because you haven't learned to ride yet. You're going to fall off over on the right side. But let's say you fall off and you see the sky and you start thinking, oh, this is a lovely sky. And you forget what you're doing. Well, it's stupid. The sky is not the point here. The nature is not the point. Feeling good is not the point. Having a nice feeling is not the point. That's another meditation. So your job is, no matter how nice the weather is, no matter how much lovely it feels on the nice grass, you climb up and get back on the damn bike. And you fall off on the left side. Now, may you fall in the mud this time. Don't get all upset and run away. Pick yourself up and get on the bike again until eventually you can stay on the bike. So it's a technique. It's a training. It is not to feel good. It is not to have a nice feeling. It is not to make the thoughts go away. It is not an alternative to the pill. It is not to have a vision. It is not to any of that. It's simply training your mind to stay focused. And it's a hard job to do. You need very precise instructions, and when you know exactly the job, stay on the bike. That's it. Whether it's muddy on one side or sunny on the other, that's not relevant. And it's not even, the job isn't even to have a nice meditation. Maybe it's really hard work in that rain, staying on your bike. The rain is not relevant. It's to stay on the bike. It's to have your mind stay on an object. So you've got to learn it properly and know what you're trying to accomplish. Not nice feelings, not make all the thoughts go away, not to have lovely feelings, not to have a vision, none of that, none of that, none of that. Not to relax, none of that. It's a simple technique to train your mind, to train your attention to stay on one thing. And why do you want that? So that you can use that in the real mode of meditation, where you now can use that intelligent focus, that clear focus, sharp, laser-like mind to unpack and unravel the nonsense in order to understand what the hell is going on in your mind and everywhere else, to get insight, to get wisdom. It's very practical. We mystify it because it's called meditation. I hope that helps. What else?
Thank you. A question from me.
Yes.
Within Buddhist psychology, what is personality and what is the connection to karma?
All your tendencies. That's it. The second way karma ripens. The first way is your body, Jeff. You've got a body. Then you have a mind. And the mind, so that's Mother Teresa or Hitler. Look at the difference. The difference is in their body. Okay, one had a penis and one didn't. And one had, whiskers and one didn't. One had, deep voice and high voice. That is the physical. The physical is one thing. That's your first karma, the type of body you've got. Both of you got human. Now, the second one is the mind in that person, which is personality, your tendencies, your characteristics. You might share them with your mother and father. This is the Western one. We think we get them from mummy and daddy because we think they're genetic and DNA and that stuff. They all play a role. But they're not the main cause. Your tendencies, you brought them with you. Your tendencies to be kind, loving, intelligent, angry, jealous, loving sex, hating sex, every tiny tendency in your mind, which is making up your personality. The overall is the shape. They're the components of your personality, aren't they? They are the components of your personality. Good at music, good at football, the whole lot. That's all from your past tendencies. They're your own. All of those, as many tendencies as you can find in your mind, they're all from you having done those before. That's it. Okay. That's it. Is that clear?
Very.
Or not?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, darling. What else?
No other questions on the chat. I don't know if anyone has any questions online or in the room.
Oh, do you have any questions, people? Any more questions? Elena, come on, ask me a question. No? Anybody?
I missed your 2 weeks ago at the last course of the emptiness course from San Francisco.
Okay.
So I would have another question to that, to the emptiness. Mm-hmm. Even if you understand conceptually what emptiness is, what I understand over the last 6 sessions, but I still think that I can't implement it. So,
okay. So why is that surprising, Elena? Why are you surprised?
Because it's so hard.
What makes you assume, Elena? My question back to you is: what makes you assume that because you can understand something intellectually that you can't yet practice it? Why is that a surprise to you? Have you not found in your own life you could learn really well the components of a recipe, but you haven't learned how to make proper cakes yet? That's just the first step. You just got to be patient. Why do we assume it's a mistake that you can't yet experience the truth of it? Why do you assume that? That's the bigger question. We all feel the same way. Oh, I know it intellectually, but I can't practice. I know about patience, but I can't practice. But why do you assume that you should be able to? Because clearly we haven't practiced enough. It's very simple. So the solution is keep practicing. No, logically, if you've got the right recipe, if you have confidence in the recipe, because you've got confidence in the cook and you've got confidence in the system, you just know, as the Tibetans would put it, it's a nicer way of putting practice makes perfect. Tibetans say nothing will get more difficult with practice. Just keep moving. Just keep moving. I mean, there's nothing special. There's nothing surprising, but it's our dissatisfaction. That's the irony. The deepest suffering of attachment, because of past practice of attachment, the main suffering of attachment is we're born with dissatisfaction. So no matter what we achieve, automatically we assume it's not enough. That's our default assumption. This is our worst crime against ourselves. So be delighted that you understand it intellectually, and with enthusiasm and joy, keep thinking it through, keep meditating, and one day the penny will drop. Be very excited. How fantastic. There's no mistake at all. Be delighted. It's a bit like you saying, well, you know, I mean, I got to grade 1, but I didn't in grade 2. Then you get to grade 2, oh, I'm only in grade 2. Then you get to grade 927, I'm only in grade 927. We're never satisfied. So you've got to catch that and start being satisfied right now, saying, wow, I'm so happy I understand it. Don't be arrogant and think now I've got it, now clear, and close the door. No, you go to the next stage and the next. It's incremental, it's gradual, and be delighted with the process. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Good, darling. But did you have a specific question about emptiness, or it was just a general point?
No, it's just a general point, because of I think what we talked in the last weeks, like a few sessions ago, that it's really hard to understand it first, what the concept is. So I think through that 6 session course, I got a bit closer, but it's still so hard to implement it that it becomes your intuition, or that you connect the dots.
You've just repeated your question, Elena, so I'm a bit disappointed. You didn't hear my answer.
No, I think I don't have maybe not a specific question to that.
The key point is, listen, Elena, the key point is every time you hear it, you understand a little bit. Then you hear it again, you understand a bit more, isn't it? So you just keep doing that. That's why listening is a really crucial part of the process. Yeah. You've got to keep listening, keep contemplating, keep meditating, and each step of the way you get a bit deeper. So just be happy with the process, delight with, but be super clear. You've got the right words, super clear, you know?
Yeah.
That's important. So just keep moving, honey.
Yeah, I will. Thank you very much.
Darling. Thank you so much. Thank you. What else, Nina or Jeff? Someone else? Afra, you have any questions? How are you, Afra? You look like you're still in your little cabin in Italy. You're still there?
Yeah,
studying.
I am. I am.
You're doing well?
I just got back yesterday.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
People are back to class now at Institute Lama Tsong Khapa?
Yeah, well, we had a first class today. So yeah, slowly we're getting back.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's good to be back.
I'm so glad, darling. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Well, I do have a question, but it's not really clear in my mind yet. So I don't know if I should.
Might just come out. Let it just come out.
Okay. So I've been thinking about karma and the karmic seeds that we drop on the mind stream. And I don't really know if there's like some sort of container on the mind stream that holds all those seeds.
I understand, yeah, I understand. I mean, this is complicated. I remember His Holiness, when I read his commentary on the mind, on Mahamudra, he said it's very easy for us to talk theoretically about the mind and know all the labels like you're studying it there. You can have all the intricate knowledge, which is important. But he said to have a direct experience of the mind, that's very sophisticated. And that's because the mind is not physical. You can't taste or touch. So the best they can do is use these language like sowing seeds, dropping in the mind. I mean, you can't touch or taste or smell or see or hear it, you know. So the best we can do is just use that language. And all we can do is, all you can do is that. So there's the consciousness, the word mind is simply referring to the process of thinking, the actual subjective cognitive process, you know. So, I mean, you can learn the components of it. You've got the mental factors, you've got the main mind, all the different bits and pieces. But even then, the only way you can become familiar with all that is by having a direct experience of it all, which is only in meditation, which is really sophisticated, the great yogis. So the best you can do is just use the language. So yeah, they talk about the store of the mind, all this kind of thing, you know. So it's just, you've just got to use the language and try and conceptualize it the best you can do.
Okay.
But I mean, otherwise, you know, I mean, otherwise, what are you going to say? You know, there's no bit you can touch. There's no bit you can. I mean, you can't. I mean, you think about what mind is. If it is not physical, think about it. You can't confine it. It can't be like space or time or matter. It can't be confined. But we know that it is right now because of delusions. So the best we can do is use the language and attempt to use those as analogies to help us get our head around it. But to experience it directly, wow, that's another discussion.
Okay.
I mean, so then, you know, what are you learning when you're learning about karma? What do they say to you where the seeds are left? What do they say?
Well, we've been a little bit studying disintegratedness, which of course, well, this position that the
you mean one of the many different views in the different Buddhist tenets, you mean?
Yes,
Like
well, disintegratedness in that, well, it's been a while, but that the seed sort of disintegrates. It's a functioning thing. It keeps disintegrating until it gives rise to an effect again.
Yeah.
So, but then it's really sort of complicated, so that it keeps disintegrating. I don't know how to see that sort of.
Changing moment to moment, doesn't it? Changing moment to moment. I mean, take an ordinary seed. I mean, it looks like it's a static thing, but it's changing every millisecond. It can't possibly, the millionth of a second before this second, the seed was not the same as it is now. So in that sense, it's always changing. That's all it disintegrating means, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, well, I remember now there is, well, if there is an action, at some point it stops. And then the having ceased of the action is when the disintegratedness starts. Yeah. So then the action has already ceased, but the disintegratedness is still going on. But that's an absence of something. So I don't really know how to understand that.
So what is the absence of what? What is this absence you're talking about? Which particular absence is this?
Well, if I throw a bowling ball, at some point my action of throwing is finished.
Yeah, it is.
The action has ceased.
Yes, it has.
But then at some point it will give rise to an effect again.
It will.
Yeah, for me, it's difficult to understand how the having ceased of an action can give rise to an
having
effect.
Ceased of an action is what? What?
That is the disintegratedness.
The cessation of the action.
Yeah, but that's a functioning thing in this specific tenet.
So what's the question?
The question is how can the absence of an action, like the having ceased of this, give rise to a next thing?
But it can't, because that's a permanent phenomenon, and permanent phenomena is not a functioning thing, and it doesn't give rise to anything.
Yeah, okay. But then in this tenet, we're studying that it's not a permanent phenomenon, and it is a functioning thing.
Or something. Well, okay, I forget all this.
Okay, that's okay. I'll study it more and then.
You have to, I can't answer that.
Yeah, okay.
I'm only a bit familiar with the Prasangika one. I'm sorry, I forget all the others. Okay,
no problem. Thank you, though.
Good on you, girl. Keep studying.
Thanks. I will.
We have 8 minutes to go until our clock finishes at 1 o'clock, whatever your time is. I'm close to 1 p.m. Anything else, sweethearts? Nobody else? No question. Anything? I don't mind.
Yes. So here Laksam. So Laksam is the meaning is the special intention. So we always try to finish our evenings, our talks, to walk out with something that keeps our heart open and makes us happier and open to others than when we walked into the center.
Wonderful.
Could you please give us an advice, a tip, something that we can do tonight on the tram this week with our families that will make them happier and will make them experience that.
I understand. So I love this. As you must know, I use all the time this analogy of a bird needs 2 wings. And it sounds cute, but it's got a profound meaning because it covers the entire path to enlightenment. So the wisdom wing is the junior school and high school. The wisdom wing is controlling your body and speech and your mind. It's the work and the whole point of the wisdom wing. So the point of the wisdom wing is that you are the beneficiary. So if you're in the world, you want to practice the wisdom wing, this is how you do it. This is like the retreat mode. The wisdom wing is you are the beneficiary. You're going to control your body, control your speech, and control your mind because you don't want more suffering. So you've got to watch your body, speech, and mind like a hawk. So the way you use the world in terms of developing the wisdom wing, you're on the tram, you're walking, you're with your family, and you notice somebody angry. You notice someone loving. You notice a rich person. You notice a poor person. So normally what the delusions do is we find fault, we criticize, we praise, and our mind goes out there and we get so distracted. Well, the way to practice the wisdom wing, everything you see, everything you hear is a learning for your mind. So, you know, when you read about, I always talk about reading about Mr. Trump, let's say, or anybody, doesn't matter, say a crummy politician. Or you see a horrible person on the tram, or your husband shouts at you, or the kid has a tantrum. And what we do is we have, based on attachment, we go, oh, that's lovely, or based on aversion, oh, that's ugly, and we start having all these opinions. We write all these philosophical stories. Instead of that, in terms of the wisdom wing and using the world to help you learn about your own mind, body, and speech, you go, you see a person angry. Well, there's anger. I recognize that. And the other one to say is, thank you for showing me how not to be. So you see angry people, you realize you've got anger in your own mind. You see angry people, you are grateful for them showing you your own anger. Every tiny thing you see in the world is a reflection of what's in your mind. So when you're on the wisdom wing, you use the world to learn about yourself. That's the wisdom wing. So everything is grist for the mill. You hear about a person stealing, you go, wow, I've got a tendency to steal. I've seen that in my mind. Thank you for showing me how not to be. Then you see people suffering. You see a war zone where somebody gets bombed. You see a baby dying. Instead of anger, fear, you go, my God, that's the fruit of past karma. That person didn't even know they had the karma, and due to their past action, they've just been bombed. Then another person wins the lottery. Instead of saying, oh, you know, there's a rich person, they're getting more rich, you go, wow, that's the fruit of their generosity. So you apply karma and the mind, and you use that as the basis for interpreting every single thing, and you bring it back to yourself. That's how you enrich the wisdom wing. That's how you learn about your body, speech, and mind. And that's how you practice the wisdom wing to get more renunciation. Then the compassion wing is, and this is the other one, everything you see, you realize you're there for them. Your body and speech. Bodhisattvas don't even need body. They don't even need a speech. Why do they take it? Because they want to help others. So just like Grace Kelly said, the wonderful Hollywood actress, of course I have to look beautiful. People have to look at me. So I have this sense of the Bodhisattva path is the sense of connection with others. Why am I standing here? Why am I in the kitchen? Why am I doing the dishes? Why am I in the tram? Why am I walking down the street? Because whoever sees me, hears me, touches me, talks to me, smells me, tastes me, may I be of benefit to them. So sometimes you feel more open-hearted and you can practice the compassion one. Sometimes you're a bit feeling more fragile, so you practice the wisdom one. And that is the entire path to enlightenment. And then every second of your day becomes meaningful. You practice the wisdom wing, which is developing your body, speech, and mind, and then you practice the compassion wing, and you'll never lose the plot, and you'll never get depressed, and you'll never get upset if you do it properly. That's my advice. Why don't we finish with the four immeasurable thoughts, which is the Bodhisattva thought? Why don't we do that? Yeah? Nina?
Yes, I'll put it up on the screen.
Okay. Or you want to say something else?
No, I just wanted to thank you.
Okay, no. So let's have the four immeasurable thoughts. This is the amazing, outrageous, brave, courageous attitude of the Bodhisattva. If we can have it, it's extraordinary. Just contemplate these words, okay? How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, ignorance, and anger. May they abide so. This is the brave attitude of the Bodhisattva. This is the brave attitude of the Bodhisattva, the special attitude, great compassion, the special attitude. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness and its causes. May they have them. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberations, excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody.